Here is demo 8-2. Um, so what we're going to do is explore responsive design for a website. So right now I have this web page open, and you can see that if I was to resize it so that it was about the size of a phone, it can do that. It will scroll down and then it puts everything in a column fashion so that it can fit to whatever the device is. And you can see as I go slowly, the breakpoint, whoops, lost it, the breakpoints as when it goes down to this slick nav menu versus having a regular navigation and then going out to its full size like this. Now, for the where is it? The exercise that you have to start with, you can see here's our web page. And when I scroll or I resize the window, it starts to chop it off. So it is not responsive at all. So if I had viewed this on a phone, I would have to scroll to the right to see the rest of it. And so, we've gone to pages like that. Drive us nuts, right? So we don't want that. We want the first version. So that's what we're going to explore here. So what I've done is I've opened up all the files, the exercise files and the solution files. So you have C8 index in your exercises, C8 main, and then in the solutions file, C8 index and C8 main. Now I have the solutions open just so I could go back and forth quickly, but obviously if you could type it into your exercise file, you would get into the habit of doing that. All right, so let's start off. We've got our HTML file. So the first thing, number 2, it says, and I don't have the instructions open on the screen because it's just, there's not enough real estate here. So you'll have to just look in your book. So it says to add a meta element like the one in figure 8-11 within the chapter. So you have a figure that's captioned 811, and that's what it's referring to. So you want to add that meta element to your HTML. So you can see right here on line 5, we already have a meta. That's our character set that we're using. But we're going to add another meta, this one here. That's what you want to add just below the character set. And this is for the viewport. So this says that we're now going to start to scale it. Okay, so then you're going to display the page in Chrome. So again, click on your lightning bolt and then view it. Okay, and then resize your browser so you can see it till it's just wide enough to see all of the page. So you're going to go just like I did. All right, number 4, you're going to display the CSS for this page. So go over to your CSS. And note that the width of the body is set to 800 pixels. So let's go to where we start the body section right here. And you'll notice on line 12 that the width of the body is 800 pixels. So it is pretty fixed. It's not moving anywhere. That's the width. That's how it is. So what we want to do is change it to a percent. Okay, and then so there's room for the 3 pixel left and the right borders. So then we're going to change the maximum width to 960. So what that looks like is up here in our body. So we're going to change the width to 98% and then the max width to 960. Okay, so that's what we want to do there. Now you're going to set the width of the list, I'm on number 5, in the submenu of the navigation menu. Okay, so if I'm in my navigation menu, so I'm going to go down here. Here's my nav right here on 48. It says the comments for the navigation menu begin here. And it wants me to go to the sub menu. So that's not going to be line 49 because that's our nav menu UL. So that's all of these home, speaker, luncheons, tickets, etc. That's on the main menu there. And how I know that is if I go over here to my HTML and I actually look in the navigation section in my unordered list, one level, I see my home, speaker, luncheon, tickets, and about. It's not about us. It's not until we get to the about us that we go deeper and we have a submenu of the unordered list, and that becomes our drop down for the about us. So that's what we're going to now style a little bit. Okay, so to get to the submenu of the navigation, we need to look for the two ULs. Okay, so right down here on, starting on line 71, we've got our nav menu UL, and then go in further, nested into the second UL. All right, so now we know where we're at. What are we going to do to this? We are going to, let me get to the solutions here. So here is our UL. It wants us to set the width to 100%. So width 100%. Now it's going to extend the full width of the list item, meaning, we go back over here, when I hover over it, it will extend this red all the way across the list menu. If I didn't have that, then it would stop right at the end of our text, and it would look really funny. So we wanted to extend the full width of that submenu. Okay. Number 6, change the widths of the section and aside elements and the A elements within the unordered list for the main navigation menu to %. Okay, by using the formula that's in figure 8-4. So you got to go back into the text, look for that figure 8-4, and there's the formula right there. Okay, and then you're going to do the same for the left and right padding for the image in the header, and then left and right padding for the section, and the left padding for the aside. So what are they talking about? So let's back out of that. So we're looking at the A element first within the unordered list for the main navigation menu. Okay, so we got to work, backwards and forwards. So look at our main navigation, so nav menu, and we're looking for the A elements. Okay, so we've got our A elements here, and then within the unordered list. So here's our unordered list. Here's the A element, so line 54. And where are we going here? Change the widths. Okay, so we want to do that and do the same for the left and right padding for the image in the header. Okay, so when we get to the image here for the header, this is the padding that we need. Here's the formula. If I move this out a little bit so you can see, they put it in a comment. All right, so it's 30 divided by 800 by 100. Okay, so that is the formula that you use. That's where we came up with the 3.75%. Okay, so that's the left and right padding because this is the top and bottom is the first number, left and right is the second. When you don't have all four, you can condense it. So the first number is top and bottom. The second number is the left and the right. Okay, so that's what that is. Same thing for the section. Right here, same formula. 525 divided by 800 by 100. We came up with a width of 65.625%. And then for our padding, we're going to do that there. Same formula. And then the left padding for the aside. Got to go find our aside. And here we go. Top right, bottom left, because there's all four of them. Here's the formula applied, 2.5%. All right, so there's a lot going on in that one there. Okay, so let's go back over to our instructions. Number 7, you're going to test them. You'll notice that changing the widths of the A element doesn't work. So move the declaration that specifies the width of the A elements to the style rule for the LI element that contains the A elements. So what we did right here, UL, LI, A. So you have to follow that right format. So it's similar to when you are trying to find a file and you're going into your folder structure. Think of this as folders. I'm going to go into the nav menu folder, double click on the UL folder, double click on the LI folder, and then I will find the A tag. Same kind of idea. Go into my nav menu. These are all the ULs. They're listed there, and then there's going to be a link on them. What does that look like? Let's go back to our HTML, and we're going to look at our nav menu. Then we have our unordered list, which is home, speakers, luncheons, etc. And then we've got each of these is a list item in that unordered list. So if I didn't set it up in CSS the way I want it to look like an actual navigation bar, it would just list these as bullets. And then we want each of these items to be a link. And so we have the A tag there, and then the link telling it where to go when we click on it. Okay, so back over here, this is where the magic happens to make it look, instead of just a bulleted list, that it actually looks like a menu bar. We want to display it in the block format. So we've got our blocks. We've got the text is aligned in the center. The padding is 1 on the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right. So we don't have a gap in between. Text decoration, we removed the underline for the link to give it more of a clean look. There's a background color, this red on the button, if you will. Then the color of the font is white. The weight of that font is bold, so you can see that it's bolded on there. So these are all of the things that we're going to change to that. So let's get back up to our directions. 9, notice the page extends beyond the right side of the browser window. That's because the maximum width of the body is 160 pixels wider than the original page. So you want to increase the width of the browser window to see the window of the page will increase only until it reaches 960. Decrease the width of the browser till the sidebar no longer fits next to this section to see that the sidebar is now displayed below the section. So if we decrease this size, you'll see that the sidebar, let me go back out here, this sidebar is now below down here at the bottom. Okay, and now I'm working off the solution file, so you may not have gotten to where these are side by side yet. Number 10, you're going to decrease the width of the browser to see what happens to the article. Okay, so you'll have to make the image scalable, and we'll do that next in 12 and 13. So that this image right here becomes, as you resize the screen, it's going to resize the image. Otherwise, if you don't do that, the image will just stay large the way that it was before, and it'll all look all wonky. So number 12, you're going to display the HTML for the page. Notice that the image element for the image in the article doesn't contain a width or height attribute. So let's go look at that. We're going to look at the HTML. We're going to look at the image, which is in the section down here. Okay, so we've got that right there. It's 250 by 225 pixels. Okay. There are no width or height attributes. So then it's going to just show up with that 250 by 225. Okay. Then the text flows to the space to its left that takes up the rest of the width of the article. So what we want to do is number 13, set the max width property of this image to 40%. So no matter how we resize that page, it's only going to take up 40% of whatever that real estate is. And then the minimum width of the property to 150, so it doesn't get too small to where you can't really see it. So when we get back over to our CSS, let me see if I can find that. Let's see. Where is it? Image, where are you? Okay. There we go. Nope, that's the header image. Okay. Section P, block quote, article, there we go, article. So it's in the article section, image. We want it to float right, and here where we set the max width to 40%, the min width to 150 pixels. Okay, so that's what's going to make that image scalable. All right, so number 14 says to enlarge the browser window so you can see the entire width of the page, and then press F12 so you have those developer tools. You want to start to reduce the width of the window, and notice that the screen size is displayed in the upper right corner. Continue to reduce the width. So what's happening is these developer tools are showing you what that screen size is, so you can kind of play around and see. Because what's happening is you want to know where that break point is, and I kind of discussed that a minute ago. Let me look at this. So we have this open. We know that it breaks right around there, okay, where it won't resize. Whereas we want it to here, we want to know once we reach that break point that it will then resize. And when we reach another break point, then we're actually going to get this special menu drop down. So you can use the developer tools, the F12, to kind of see where that break point is. And so in number 16, it wants you to add a media query for the screen type that checks the viewport width is the width that you just noted or less. So you want to jot down where you see that break point is. So within that media query, you're going to decrease the font size of the A elements within the H2 elements of the aside to 84%. Okay, so let's get back over to our CSS. Okay, so when we, let's see, decrease the font size of the A elements within the H2 elements of the aside. So we want to go work backwards. Get the aside, H2 element, and then the A element in there. Okay, so go back into here actually. Okay, yeah, all right, we got it right. Okay, so you want to set that aside to 85%. Okay, so go ahead and do that for the aside. H2 elements of the aside, 84%. Decrease the font size of the H1 to 125%, and then decrease the font size of H2 in the section and aside to 110. Okay, so then go back to the browser window, see that the font size of the headings have been decreased. Then reduce the width of the window, I'm on number 18, some more until the section and the aside get too close again, and notice the width of the screen. So you want to code a media query for the screen type that checks that the viewport width is the width that you just noted or less. Because you want the image in the header to not float and center the contents of the header. Okay, so 20, go back to the browser window, see the styles you just coded have been applied. And then 21, change the section and aside so they don't float. All right, so let's see, section. Okay. So you're going to check that, mark that so they don't float, and then set the right padding for the aside so the same as the left padding. So you're going to go back and forth kind of working through kind of testing things. Change this, test it, change that, test it as you go through all of these. Okay, so 21, once you set the right padding for the aside, so it's the same as the left padding, and you set the widths of the section in the aside by subtracting the left and right padding from 100. So whatever's left over, that's what you're going to put in there. Because if you look at the screen, the section and the aside are sharing the same 100% of the entire screen. So if this is going to be 60, then you're going to have your 40 over here, or vice versa. So that's where you have to like subtract and then figure out which one you're going to have. Then it says in 22, test the page. Notice the image in the article is too big. Okay, so then you want to fix that by changing the maximum width of the image to 30%, and then test that again. So like here I've got on line 134 is 40%. So you kind of like just kind of play around with it as you're going through these different steps. Then on 23, it says to improve the formatting for the aside, right here, display the speakers in 2 columns. Okay, so right now they're in 1. When I resize, they drop down. Now they could stay in 1 row, 1 column, really long column, but why not utilize the space so it looks more balanced by putting them in 2 columns? Okay, so to do that, you're going to need to add a div around everything in the aside except the H2 element. So when I'm going to add tags, that means I need to go into my HTML. So let's go to my HTML, and in the aside, let's go down, we've got our section, and then we've got our aside right here. So everything except for the H2 element, you're going to wrap a div around. So here's the opening div, and I go all the way down before my closing aside, and then I put the closing div in there. So I basically wrapped those speakers, that speakers section, in a div, because now I can use that div in my CSS to make things happen. In this case, put them in 2 columns. Okay, so I can then set the column count property to 2, and then I can test that. So in my aside, and I have my padding. Let's see, let's go back into my HTML. My speakers are all set there. My CSS. Okay. I've got my aside down here, my media queries that I put in earlier, my at media, only screen and max width 648. And my speakers, hashtag speakers, column count 2. So right here is where I can set the column count to 2. Okay. All right, then I'm going to use the number 24, add a mobile menu using the SlickNav plugin. Okay, what does that mean? So look at figure 8-14 in your textbook in chapter 8, and you're going to use that as a guide to add a link element for the slicknav.css. So just like we create a link to this CSS, go back into my index, back up to the head section. Remember the part that doesn't fit on the body. So everything up here, I am going to add a link. So my link right here on line 9 is to my style sheet that I've been working on. Line 10, I'm going to add to another style sheet, because you can add multiple style sheets. This one is called styles/slicknav.css, because that's in our styles folder, all ready to go and be used. And what is that? Well, that is this wonderful thing right here. Then when I size it down to a phone size, I get this little slick navigation menu with a drop down. So it's already pre-coded, so you just have to use it. All right, so 24 through 28 go through, tell you to add the nav element before the nav element for the navigation menu. So right here, we have our mobile menu. So we're going to add in that nav ID equals mobile menu, because then when we go into CSS, we can reference that mobile menu and display it in block. Okay. Because we want just, if it's a regular nav menu, meaning it's wide enough, so it's like this, we want it to look like that. So we don't want to, we want display to be none. If it turns and it gets small enough, then meaning it, the max, you know, it's small enough, then we want it to display that way. And then slick nav, we're going to put a background color and so forth, as indicated in numbers 27 and then 28. And then 29, you're going to dock the developer tools right side of the browser window, narrow the window until the P element in the footer runs over to a second line. Note the width of the screen. So you want to code one more media query, number 30, that checks the viewport width is more than the width you noted or less, so the footer doesn't get too close to the edges of the screen. All right, so all that says is we're going to add, one more here down the bottom for the max width of 114. Font size is going to be 90%. And then we've got our 3 mobile sizes here. Okay, so there we go. This is if we have our smallest, our tablet size here, and then, a larger screen. All right. Thank you very much.